The broadcast is live.
We are indeed live, Billy Walker. Hello, good evening, and thank you for joining us. Tonight, we have a Father's Day special. So who better for us to have as our guests than famous or perhaps infamous father and son duo, Billy and Alistair Walker. As always, it's going to be an informal conversation. So for those of you viewing at home, please do join in with lots of questions for our guests. And I think with these two characters, there certainly should be lots of questions coming in. As GlenAllachie's master distiller, Billy's whisky history has been well documented, including his acquisition of GlenAllachie Distillery. So tonight, and of course with Father's Day approaching, we'll focus more on the family whisky connection, and that, of course, brings me to our second guest, Alistair Walker, not only Billy's youngest son, but also former colleague, Burn Stewart Distillers, sales director, ex-sales director at Benriach, recent founder of the Alistair Walker Whisky Company, which, of course, we'll come on to in due course. Billy, Alistair, thank you both very much for joining us tonight.
Good evening.
Billy, it's a Father's Day special, so I'll start with yourself. As I mentioned at the start, your history, your whisky history, is well documented. We've discussed it ourselves at length. Were you ever hopeful that your children would follow your career path? And when Alistair first expressed an interest in a Scotch whisky career, did you have any advice for him? So 2 questions there for you, Billy.
Yeah. I suppose the answer is yes, David. That I've always worked in businesses that are creating brands rather than protecting and managing legacy brands, and inevitably that probably means you're working in either a startup company or a relatively small company. There's also the kind of characteristic that it's quite difficult to find people who can work with me. So Alistair was kind of pitched in as being probably, at least he understood what he was getting himself into. So I suppose it was a relatively sensible thing to do. Small company, the challenge to do more than one brief, David, and I suppose from Alistair's point of view, he probably had some reservations about joining his old man in the business. But in truth, although he was joining the business, it wasn't as if it was a father and son in the business. It really was colleagues. And once you cross the line, get into the company, you know, it wasn't a father and son relationship. It was employer and employee relationship.
Billy, that's, you know, I think you're anyone who's watching this and has family, worked with family, is nodding their head in agreement. I certainly know I am. I tried not to laugh when you said you're a challenge to work with. Family dynamics, always challenging, can be a great strength and a great challenge as well. So Alistair came on board and he joined you at Benriach. That company obviously kept growing and growing, and ultimately, you know, a few years after the company had been formed, you were with 3 distilleries within your portfolio. Was there ever a chance of Shona, your daughter, reconsidering her chosen career path and joining the family business?
The truth of that is, David, I don't think so. I think Shona was quite set in her ways. She had her own plans for what her life should be, how she was going to define her life. So it's certainly not anything that I seriously considered, and for sure, I'm pretty sure that Shona really wasn't all that interested.
Sure. Okay, absolutely. Billy, just quickly before I swap over to Alistair, what drams have you chosen for us tonight, and any particular reason why?
I think what we're going to look at tonight, David, is the GlenAllachie 12-year-old and the GlenAllachie 15-year-old. There are good reasons for choosing them. In fact, it's important to note that the ones we've chosen are the very most recent bottlings of both the 12-year-old and the 15-year-old. And we may get an opportunity to talk a little bit more about this, but I said on a number of occasions, David, when we've been presenting on Facebook or YouTube, that we're always on a journey in terms of trying to achieve the kind of signature quality that we're looking for across the GlenAllachie core range. And I think I've repeated in the past that we probably were about 90% there. And I think what we're looking at tonight is just about the embodiment of where we want the GlenAllachie personality to be. And I think it presents itself really, really well in both the 12-year-old and the 15-year-old. Truth is, we could have chosen the cask strength of the 18 or indeed the 25, or indeed showcase the pilot of the 21-year-old. But we know the journey we're on. We know the personality we're developing. And it's so, I think you probably share, David, it is falling into place.
No, absolutely, Billy. Okay, well, in due course, we'll have a wee try of the 12-year-old, I think we'll start with. Just quickly say hello to a few of the regular faces that's joining us tonight. So thanks again for joining us. Alistair, having worked previously with you, I know you had. Don't start laughing. I know you'd studied maths. You've got a master's in finance.
I'm just looking at some of the questions.
Don't worry, we'll be filtering those out. I only ask the nice ones. So maths and finance. That perhaps suggests you are heading down a different path to the whisky world. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, the inspiration that Billy was, and your whisky history.
Okay. I'm not sure about this inspiration chat that you're putting towards me there, but we'll gloss over that. So my whisky history started in 1997 when I joined Burn Stewart. I actually remember that I had accepted a job with an insurance company in Glasgow, and I don't even think they exist anymore. I can't remember who it was, but my dad had made a counter proposal, and to be honest, it was a better salary, so it seemed like a more attractive option for me. So I had to at the last minute reject the insurance company job, and I went to work for Burn Stewart. Now the plan there was really just to get some experience on my CV. I was just out of university. And I needed to get some work experience, and Billy had said, why don't you come here and work for a year? And I stayed for 6.5 years. They just couldn't get rid of me, so that was the introduction to whisky. And if you want to interject, sorry, I might be prattling on a bit here.
No, this is fascinating. It's interesting to hear. Do you know? But it was interesting to hear that you were already going on one career path, and this is a Father's Day special, and Billy had a chat with you and said, why don't you come and try working for a whisky company for a while? So it's interesting, and it's that sliding doors moment, I guess. So okay, what's your earliest memory of Billy and his connection to whisky? Do you remember him bringing drams back? Most people, when they say their first taste of whisky, is maybe pinching a little bit of their granddad's blend from out his cupboard. Was your introduction to whisky something a little bit different, a little bit more special?
I honestly, I cannot remember. I know you I knew you were going to ask me this, and I genuinely can't remember the first time that I tasted whisky. There wasn't some kind of magical moment. And to be honest, I think most people would try it probably when they're quite young and we immediately think, oof, that's not for me. But there were always bottles round about the house. And I used to occasionally get the privilege, let's call it that, of being dragged into the blending room at Inverhouse Distillers on a Saturday. When my dad was forced to look after me, and that was always quite an experience to go there through Airdrie. But genuinely, I mean, I can't remember the first dram, but I started working for Burn Stewart when I was 22, so I was exposed to whiskey and good quality whiskey at a younger age than most people would probably come to whiskey, because when I speak to a lot of my friends, they probably didn't really start getting interested in whiskey until they were in their late 20s or early 30s. So I kind of had a good decade start on them.
Absolutely, and I think what better way to spend a Saturday either at the football with your dad or at the whiskey lab with your dad. So, Alistair, we mentioned, I said at the very beginning, the Alistair Walker Whisky Company, which of course we'll come on to in due course. Billy's picked a couple of drams for us to try tonight. What have you picked from your range for us to go over?
Oh, so the first one is these two whiskies are both from the latest batch, which is batch number 3. The first one is a Glen Spey single cask from 2006, which has been finished in a Pedro Jimenez sherry puncheon. And the second one is a 1997 Bowmore, which has also been finished in a PX cask, but this time a hogshead, which is a little bit smaller than a puncheon. And obviously the Bowmore's a heavily peated whiskey as well.
Okay, Alistair, just on that note then, before we go and try the first whiskey, there's some great questions coming in. So here's one from Russell. I'd like to ask Alistair if he's a checklist of what he wants from a single cask for the infrequent flyers range, or do you just choose what you like and what you prefer? So is it checklist or is it gut instinct and palate?
A bit of both. I mean, you can never, you always want to like the whiskey that you're going to bottle, but there may be some whiskies that are more towards your palate than others. For example, if I was walking into a bar, I'd probably gravitate towards a sherry cask whiskey more than a very medicinal, heavily peated Islay style. But if I can bottle Islay whiskies, I will do that because I know that people absolutely love them. The other thing, I mean, quality is the other thing that I'm always looking to do, because you're bringing the cask out as part of a batch. You want to have a bit of variety in each batch, so you don't want all the whiskies to be the same age and the same style and the same flavour profile. So you're trying to maybe have an older dram in there, a younger dram, different regions, different styles, maybe a single grain, so that you've got a nice, well-rounded selection.
No, absolutely. Good.
David, I see an interesting question about the Barton grain, and I'd like to say something about the Barton grain.
Absolutely, Billy. Fire on.
I worked down in, I worked with, in these days it was called Ballantyne's, the Barton Highland Walker. The Barton grain, in my opinion, it's such a great disappointment that it doesn't exist anymore, because I think personally it was the outstanding grain. And one of the reasons it was the outstanding grain, that it was a filtered wort. So you had a very, very clean wort going to the fermentation. Of course, it made it a more expensive grain to produce. But in terms of the overall quality that delivered, it was fantastic. Continues to be fantastic, and this particular cask, I know this cask quite well. There will be no disappointments with that cask.
Very good. Is there still a little bit of Dumbarton available, Billy, or is it very, very scarce now?
I would suspect that it's probably pretty scarce, David. For sure, Chivas Pernod will still be holding some of this kind of age and older. But it was a great. I mean, from my point of view, I think it was sad that it disappeared off the kind of map as a significant grain presence.
Very good, very good. Billy, time's running away. We're a quarter past. Do you want to GlenAllachie 12? Should we try that? Do you want to talk us through that, Billy?
Well, as I said earlier, David, since we acquired the distillery, we've been on a constant quality journey. And part of that journey has been understanding the inventory that we acquired, Understanding its DNA, sampling, understanding how this spirit reacts with different casks. And we've got to a point now with, I believe now, with certainly with the 10, the 12, the 15, and the 18, we've got to a point where we believe we have achieved the kind of sweet points for the structure of the dram. So I'm just going to pour a gentleman's measure.
It's absolutely fantastic on the nose, Billy.
It's fantastic on the nose. It's rich, and you're going to pick up. There is a series of flavour notes that will drive all through the GlenAllachie core range, and the things that you should be expected to pick up are butterscotch and honey, dark chocolate, mocha, probably stewed plums. Definitely cinnamon and ginger, and if you've got a very, very sensitive nose at this time of night, you might even pick up a hint of pineapples.
Fantastic.
Quite a big. A full whiskey, David. The flavour profile swarms all over your mouth. And again, you're looking at, the key features are definitely, you've got your traditional butterscotch and honey, heather honey, dark chocolate mocha, dry fruit.
Lovely, rich mouthfeel there, Billy. It just explodes. Huge amount of flavour. I think people like to ask me when I'm out about what's my favourite GlenAllachie. I tend to say the 10-year-old cask strength. I think the 12-year-old Billy could be becoming my go-to dram now.
Well, David, we've moved that beautifully, and it is a full experience. And as you finish, you're going to get the cinnamon, the ginger, and the orange zest. So yeah, this is. We know what the building blocks in this are, David, and I think we're happy. We're not perfect, but we're happy with what we have here.
Good. Well, it's certainly one too, and we're growing distribution, Billy. It's becoming more and more available, and I think we're also getting growing brand awareness. So it's great that people that are coming to GlenAllachie for the first time will possibly be joining our journey with the 12-year-old. Okay, gents. So there's loads of questions. There's a hello from our great supporter and friend Rolef in the Netherlands. Rolef, you have our best wishes from all at GlenAllachie, and we hope to see you back to your best very soon. There's a question from Leonard Russell. Billy, he's never seen you looking so young. And Alistair, the independent.
It's not what he said in the email earlier today. He said, was this going to be Steptoe & Son?
And he's added for you, Alistair. He said the independent bottling section must be being well. Is that Bose headphones you're wearing? So a few comments there coming in. What else do we have coming in here? It's a good question from Joan Bruce. Would you say, Alistair, I'll come to you as well, Billy. This question is to both of you. Would you say you both have the same tastes? So I think maybe, Billy, you mentioned you knew the cask that Alistair had picked, or the Dumbarton that you were talking about. When you're working together with whiskey, are you finding similar taste profiles coming through for you both?
Well, that's a really difficult question, David, because tasting is such a personal experience. One of the challenges in tasting is trying to express the actual experience. Some people might say almonds, somebody might say marzipan, somebody might say damsons, somebody might say plums. It's so difficult to capture the whole taste experience with words. But my suspicion is that we probably, since we are related genetically, we probably do have a very similar taste experience. I do have to say for the people who are tuning in, when you're professionally tasting, best time to do it is 10 o'clock in the morning, 9:30, 10 o'clock, when your mouth is at its freshest, your brain is at its sharpest, and your whole kind of system's alive. Tonight is about drinking and enjoying, and not necessarily analytically breaking it down.
Absolutely.
Nevertheless, it's part of the whole experience. Yeah, I've got to. There's a question coming here that I must answer. It's from Mr. Greg Starling. Starling. He's asking, who's the better player, Amoruso or Goff? I have to tell you, Richard Goff was a fantastic player. He's also a very, very, very good friend of mine, so I've got to say that.
Alistair, what's your take, Amoruso or Goff?
Well, I mean, it has to be Goff, really.
Very good.
I'm just. I can't believe that was shoehorned in there.
It's the great two Walker passions, whiskey and football. We've been talking.
It's funny what you were saying about taste. I definitely, when I look back at what we did at Benriach with all the different cask finishes and all the experimentation with wood, I loved all that, and that's something that Billy obviously brought into the business. Much more so at Benriach than at Glendronach, and it's definitely something that I'm doing with my range of whiskies. Where we definitely don't agree on taste is when it comes to white wine, where Billy seems to really like these very sweet white wines, Rieslings and Chardonnays, which not for me.
Well, that's Alistair, that's the key, and Billy said it as well. It's all about individual preferences and different profiles. Alistair, here's a question in from Wee Dram. Who influenced the label designs on your bottlings? Really interesting and a catchy style. So a bit of a compliment there.
The label design, it's so hard to come up with a name because there's so many whiskey companies out there that have been going for a long time and that have registered all the great names. I always say that when you look at probably the best name for a single cask independently bottled is Douglas Lang's Provenance, because Provenance captures everything about what a single cask is. It's very hard to come up with names like that now because they've all been taken.
Sure.
I had about 100 names in my head, and I sat down with my designer, and we kind of homed in on half a dozen. And he just said, "Look, what do you want? What kind of style do you want for the label?" And I always like these sort of retro travel posters and postcards, that type of thing. And we thought we could tie that in with Infrequent Flyers, which was one of the names that I had. So it kind of grew from there.
It is very distinctive packaging, and yes, I do like it myself. Just rewinding a little bit there, there's a Mr. Comrie from Elgin saying, speaking of taste, both Billy and Alistair could have had a better taste in football teams. I don't think we need to answer that.
David, you pass on the message that he's just a loon.
There's a few come on the Dons, and fine. Mr. Starling is saying absolutely correct, Billy. Okay. What have we got here? Alistair, you set up a whiskey company from scratch. Borrowed your first whiskey. I think you said you're on your third release now. What have the challenges been?
How long have you got? The biggest challenge, and if you ask any independent bottler, even if they're new or established, the biggest difficulty is getting guaranteed access to casks stock. It's changed a lot in the last 10, 15 years. The single malt category's become really, it's grown a lot. It's very dynamic, very popular. And as a result, distillers are more reluctant to release stock to third-party bottles. The other consequence of that is that the prices have been increasing year on year. So you can't get access to everything, and you pay a little bit more for it, but it's still possible to get stock. And one of the important things there is having good relationships with suppliers. And because I've been in the industry for over 20 years, fortunately, I can pick up the phone to some people and they will actually at least have a cup of coffee with me, and not just say, see you later, no thanks. So stock is one of the biggest challenges. The other thing, when you're a one-man band, the amount of paperwork and administration that's involved in getting whiskey from a cask onto a shelf in a bottle is unbelievable, and you know that yourself.
No, absolutely.
I just add something else, and I think Alistair's right. It has become more difficult. The category, the sector, has become much more sexy, I think is the word. But it's also true to say that if in this industry, you've got to be safe hands. You cannot be playing left field. You've got to be right down the middle and make sure that if you're playing around with other people's whiskey, you've got to do it right.
Mm-hmm. That I can understand that, Billy. That makes sense.
I'm still tasting the 12-year-old, and it's getting fuller and it's opening up beautifully. And in fact, much as I have huge admiration for what we've achieved with a 15-year-old, the 12-year-old is an absolute belter, and will give it a right good run for its money.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Billy. I put a little splash of water on mine. I believe you're of the opinion just straight. I like putting a little bit of water on it, so I let it sit and see how that opens up, and come back to that. Alistair, there's questions flying in. Alistair, here's a question from a customer of ours, Craig at Time Drum Whisky, a customer of yours. What's been your favourite infrequent flyer bottling so far? And is there one release distillery you'd like to bottle?
Oh, that's a difficult question.
Let's break it down. What's your favourite one so far?
I really liked the Linkwood that we did in batch 2, which was not at all. It wasn't what it said in the label. Let's just put it that way. When the sample came in and I looked at the description from the supplier, and then I looked at the whiskey, I thought, wow, this is amazing, and it was fantastic. The second question was that which one would I like to? Is there one,
taking out GlenAllachie, is there one distillery you really would like to bottle?
I would love to bottle a GlenDronach single cask, and I'm not sure if the audience will understand how incredibly difficult that would actually prove to be, and it's our own fault, because when we bought GlenDronach back in 2008, one of the first things that we did was we just stopped selling casks of GlenDronach to anybody. I mean, nothing. Everything was kept for our own use. And as a result, there hasn't been a cask of GlenDronach sold in the market for 12 years. And whatever was there before will have slowly dwindled away. So the opportunity to actually buy a cask of GlenDronach on the third party market is minimal. But I'd love to do it because of my connection with it, and it's a style of whiskey that I always loved.
Of course,
who knows?
David, can I pick up a question that's come in from Miroslav about a Burgundy finish? Just to emphasise the point that we've done a lot of really interesting work with wood management, and absolutely there's going to be a Burgundy finish. And if I say so myself, it is absolutely stunning, and you've already tasted one of them, David.
Absolutely.
The Premier Cru class, that'll come out as a release. I can tell you, Miroslav, that when you taste this Burgundy finish, you will be blown off the planet.
Fantastic, Billy. That takes us on. There's another question just further earlier, that's come in from Arnie, and it's a wood finish question regarding the Muscatel bottlings. Example, the recent Muscatel wood finish 11-year-old. Billy, for some reason, I think that the GlenAllachie distillate works extremely well with the Muscatel casks. So that's from Arnie. It's not so much a question, Billy. It's more a statement. But anything you would add to that?
I think we start from the premise, David, that GlenAllachie is not a shy Speyside. It's quite a big experience in its standalone kind of personality. So it doesn't get swarmed by the Muscatel, and Muscatel is also quite a big wine experience. So it balances very, very nicely. Neither of them overwhelm each other. The equilibrium is pretty damn good.
Yeah, Alex, absolutely. What else coming in here? Another one of our friends and supporters, Aidan Over the Water. There's over 1,000 members in the GlenAllachie Appreciation Society. So congratulations on that one, Aidan. Russell is following up. Near impossible to bottle a Glendronach, surely, which I think ties with what you said, Alistair. What about a Glenglasser? Maybe starting to take you down loads there, but a great whiskey. But some of that is available. Have you got any of that in your stocks?
Well, you see, David, one thing I learned when I became an independent bottler is you always play your cards quite close to your chest. But let's just say there's a stronger possibility of that one.
Watch this space.
Let me also say, David, it will not be coming from his old man.
Oh, indeed, absolutely. Billy, what did he say when you told Alistair that he couldn't buy any GlenAllachie?
Well, I mean, he was only part of the jigsaw, David. Everybody else was excluded, so why should he not be excluded?
Absolutely, no special circumstances. All the way back. Absolutely. Alistair, it's past. Do you want to? You picked a Glen Spey.
Yes.
PX. You don't need to spend a huge amount. Do you want to take us through this one quickly?
Yeah. So I just want to, if you can see, the colour profile on this is ridiculous. So this is one of those whiskies where the flavour stands up to what the colour would suggest. It's a single cask, always bottled at cask strength. This one's 57.5%. It's been finished in a Pedro Jimenez sherry puncheon. So a big outturn on that one. Big cask in terms of size, big cask in terms of flavour profile. Amazing. The nose is all like toffee and kind of molten treacle. Very, very rich and intense.
Mm-hmm. It is, I'm just coming back to the colour. It absolutely is a fantastic colour on that one, Alistair. What did you say it was? It's 13-year-old cask strength, 57.5. Alistair Walker release 21.
Some wonderful spice notes on the mouth.
Billy, I know you're not an aficionado of not so keen on adding a bit of water. Alistair, cask strength, sherry cask, would you say go in straight and then add a bit of water, or how would you approach this one?
I'd always say go in straight on any whiskey. I do find that sherry casks are a kind of a breed of their own. I've never. I think you can get away with not adding water to a sherry cask. I don't think it's required in many cases. I always found that with Glendronach. There's other whiskies I think that work brilliantly with water. I think if you've got a peated spirit and a little touch of water in there, really opens up the profile. But on this one, I mean, it's up to everyone how they want to do it. It's obviously quite a high ABV whiskey. Personally, I'm not going to put water in this one.
David, can I say, if you've done your job properly, if as a blender I've done my job properly, you shouldn't need to add water.
Controversial, Billy, but yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I personally, I agree with you, Alistair. I think on a sherry cask, you can sometimes add water and you almost make it go flat. But some of the higher ABVs, I would, again, it's personal preference, I would probably put just a little bit of water, careful not to drown it, just to, as you say, open it up a little bit and bring the ABV.
I think the thing about sherry cask maturation is it's all about, everything being big. It's big flavours, it's big strength, it's bursting with all these different characteristics. I mean, if you come back to this one, You've got all this kind of Black Forest Gateau sort of Christmas cake character going on there. It's so sweet and unctuous and intense and viscous, and it's a very kind of chewy, thick whiskey.
By the way, David, Glen Spey, a cracking wee distillery.
It's not one you see that often in independent bottling. Is that a reasonable, a fair assumption to say?
I'm trying to get my brain cells going, David. I think it was previously in the ownership of IDV, and along with, I think they had 4 at the time: Ochrois, Cando, Glen Spey, one other. It's a shame now. I believe, my understanding is it's now making gin. So there might be a rarity value to having some Glen Spey as well. But it was a cracking little story.
That's a fantastic whiskey there. Alistair, what does that retail for? Can you remember off the top of your head?
Oh, now you're asking. Oh, yeah.
I think what I'm.
This takes me back, David.
what I'm getting, maybe we'll do a little.
I think it's round about the sort of 70 pounds a bottle, 75 maybe. There or thereabouts.
Maybe once your dad's off the call, we'll talk about doing a wee whiskey swap. They've got some great questions coming in. Here's one. I think you need to be a football fan of Scottish football of a certain vintage. This one's in from Peter Semple. Alistair, in choosing a cask, what are the dangers of uncovering a Van Vossen when you think you have a Van Basten? So
that's a very good question, Pedro. Now
he's not finished, Alistair. So let me just what he's saying. He's finished up. Pete's finished up. Wait, have you ever chosen a cask that you did not like, but you knew the whiskey drinkers would?
Not yet. I had a cask that I was going to bottle in batch 2. It was from quite a well-known distillery that's got a very good reputation, and at the last minute, I decided that it was most definitely a Van Vossen, and it was substituted at the last minute for a very nice whiskey from Othrusk, which is not a famous distillery by any means, but just looking at the liquid, this was a much better dram than what I was originally going to go with. So I swapped them over, and that particular whiskey that didn't make it is now sitting in a sherry cask somewhere in the walls of your particular distillery, although it's not from your distillery.
Not to worry, we'll have a wee look for that next week. I think a lot of these I think you need to be an aficionado of Scottish football from around the 80s to understand a lot of the names tonight. Right, okay. Jeremy Watt, a question for you, Alistair. I think I'll let you answer this. Do you buy and bottle straight away, or are you laying stuff down? Are you laying stock down for the future?
Is that for me?
That's for yourself,
yes. I mean, it's brilliant when you can find some gems that you want to bottle straight away. But what I've been doing over the last 2 years is trying to build up as big and as wide an inventory as possible. So there's a huge component of laying stock down for future. And what's happening at the moment is we're getting to the point where some of the whiskies that were re-racked over the last 2 years are now getting to a stage where I'm happy to bottle them. So you're going to see a nice balance between original cask and wood finishes going forward, which I think is quite a nice blend to have.
You said about playing your cards close to your chest. How many casks? You're what, 2.5 years old now as a company? How many casks have you got laid down under your at the Alistair Walker Whisky Company? And feel free not to answer if you don't want to.
I won't give you an exact number of casks, but I actually did a little inventory the other day, and I can tell you that I now have whiskey from over 50 distilleries.
Wow!
So
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I look forward to trying some of those. The whiskey swap sounds more and more likely. Here's another question from Craig again. Billy, this is one for you. He said, with the SWE regs changing all the time, and I'm assuming he's alluding to the tequila update, what's the most bizarre cask type we are maturing at GlenAllachie, or indeed, what's the most bizarre one you've seen overall in your whisky career?
Well, the one that caused me the greatest challenge was Tokai.
I knew that was coming.
and it was only because, David, that either we hadn't husbanded the cask properly, perhaps we had left it too long before we filled it. But my memory was we put actually quite an old Ben Riach into it, but it tasted like acetone. And I thought, wow, this has not actually performed well. But I have also other Tokais that have behaved absolutely beautifully. But, it's an interesting question, David. Unique tequila cask. Yeah, we would try tequila. But the conversation we were having earlier today, David, I mean, we are dipping our toe into a whole variety of things, different oak genuses. We definitely want, at some point in this calendar year, to get some Scottish oak cooper filled. And we'll fill some into new fill, some into relatively young whiskey, maybe 5-year-old, and some into 10-year-old, just see how they develop. Now, historically, Scottish oak was quite commonly used, in the older days, but difficult to work. Scottish oak, it's short trees, lots of knots. Coopers hate it, difficult to work. Probably sawyers hate it too, and also very expensive. We want to get into some Mizunara casks for sure. Unbelievably expensive, £3,000, £3,500 a whack. But we want to know how the whiskey interfaces with these casks. And in the case of Mizunara, maybe we don't need to buy brand new. My understanding, talking to some of my Japanese friends, is that maybe second fill Mizunara is the way to go, because it's kind of taken the very kind of aggressive notes already out of the wood.
All right, Billy, it sounds like we've got some interesting and exciting plans, so look forward to seeing them coming together. Billy, your second whisky of the night, another stalwart from the GlenAllachie Co range. Perhaps if you want to...
we're going to taste the 15-year-old, and it's the latest bottling. I think.
I'll get a point of order here, David, because you told me what was getting tasted, but I didn't know about this latest bottling, chat. I don't feel that I've been furnished with the most up-to-date versions of the whiskey.
Just be grateful you've got any.
Whatever you have will not disappoint.
Billy, I noticed the samples supplied to yourself by the Alistair Walker Whisky Company were 4 times the size of the ones that I got. So,
see, David, I passed the samples to my dad and said it was his choice as to who got the big ones and the small ones.
Listen, David, the ones I got weren't exactly huge either.
Yeah, every penny's a prisoner, guys. Come on.
But Alistair, the GlenAllachie 15-year-old was just the very first bottling, I think, was last August, Billy. So this is quite a new addition to the GlenAllachie range. It is the core. So it's been pretty consistent day one right through to what we're tasting tonight, or what Billy and I are tasting, not you apparently. Billy, back to you. It's your whiskey. Talk us through it.
On the nose, David, the same kind of personality, but probably bigger and richer. You're definitely going to pick up all the key character, all the building blocks that we expect from this kind of GlenAllachie and the cask. You're going to have butterscotch, heather honey, big and dark chocolate, waves and waves of dark chocolate, mocha.
It's very deep. The flavour. It's like the 12-year-old on extension, just a bit richer, a bit fuller.
And David, that is ultimately what we have to deliver. We cannot have people buying the 15-year-old and getting only 12-year-old value. We have to make sure that what we put in the bottle is delivering serious value for the consumer. It's fun. It's fun.
I was just going to say that it's one of the things you were saying there, though, that I always found was quite interesting when you're working with one distillery is, and it was more so at Ben Riach. How do you, if you've got a range of like 6 or 7 core expressions. So you have to find a way to make sure that they're not just older versions of the one before. You need to give each one its own personality.
Well, I don't think we give it its own chemistry personality, Alistair. What we have to deliver is enhanced richness as each of the expressions gets older. And you and I, David, have had this conversation over a long period of time. Age matters. If we don't believe that, we don't believe it. Age does matter. And if all the things are aligned properly, you make good spirit, you use top end wood, you will find that the differential between an 8, a 12, a 15, an 18, a 21, it delivers itself. And that's the challenge. That's what we as blenders, distillers, have to deliver for the consumer. And of course, at the right price. This 15-year-old, in my opinion, is stunning.
Mm-hmm. I think, Billy, since we've launched it, it has been certainly one of the products that has helped put GlenAllachie on the map, helped announce the arrival of GlenAllachie. So we're certainly doing something right with that one. And coming back, I'm not going to add water to that one. I'm just going to keep sipping it as it is. Questions coming in. Following on from a question about finishes and casks, there's a German distillery who's going to release a tea cask whiskey, a coffee cask whiskey. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to work, or perhaps we wouldn't even consider doing something like that due to the SWE regulations. Billy, any thoughts on a tea cask or a coffee cask?
David, it's not new. When we, in the very early stages of Ben Riach, we were asked by a Chinese company to do an oolong tea styled, and I think it was a 14-year-old. Of course, it lost its identity as whiskey, but that wasn't an issue for them. What they wanted to do was marry a really, really nice, a very full-bodied whiskey with oolong tea leaves, and it was my recollection, David, is that we did it with one butt. No, it was Taiwanese company, and you know what? It was terrific, but the colour development was unbelievable. It was almost black, and taste-wise, kind of dry. The tea, the amount of tea that they insisted that we put into it, kind of overwhelmed it a little bit. But if they're doing a tea whiskey, they will find a way of getting something quite interesting out of it.
It's an interesting concept. Obviously, the SWE regs are there for a reason. They're both a great strength, and in some people's opinion, perhaps hold the industry back in some ways. But it's certainly an interesting. That story you alluded to there, Billy, was certainly news to me. Coming back to the more the more normal casks, here's something from Tastin, if I'm pronouncing that right. GlenAllachie and Virgin Oak casks is magic. Billy, keep up the work with Virgin Oak. Well, I think Tastin, Billy, is going to have something to look forward to later in the year. Maybe, do you want to allude quickly to what we've got coming down the line?
Yeah, I mean, we do know that GlenAllachie in Virgin Wood responds extremely well. It gives a really, really nice balance in terms of the flavour delivery. But we've been looking at different genuses. We've looked at a lot of Appalachian oak. I think some of you might be familiar. I know some of the guys that I speak to on a regular basis know that we've done some work in Chinkapin, which is a Missouri oak, and has a quite unusual flavour delivery. One of the real characteristics, very, very spicy, but you get a very interesting licorice, not an overwhelming licorice note, but a very interesting lingering licorice note. We're also doing some work on French oak and Northern Spanish oak. And as David is going to be the architect of all of this, and certainly the professor of all of it, we're going to release these, I think, within the next months. David will release the Chinkapin, we'll release the French Virgin Oak and the Spanish Virgin Oak, all of which, I mean, a lot of the characteristics that are dear to the hearts of the people who are close and love the kind of chemistry of what we're doing in the industry, all naturally air dried, somewhere between 24 months and 48 months, medium toast. and probably either medium char or char 3, which is a little bit medium plus. So you're going to get a lot of, I mean, really, really interesting flavour delivery from the actual cask. So quite a lot to look forward to. David and I have dipped in. We know I mean, I've done some pilots on what we're going to release. Absolutely staggeringly good. Chuffed.
Looking forward to these, Billy, and you know you're right. Some of the virgin oaks that we've brought to the market already have had a fantastic reaction, so I'm sure these will be a great success. Alistair, here's a question from Debbie. What's the most useful whiskey tip Billy has taught you during your whiskey career?
Probably, that's quite a question. Really, just the you can't cut corners. You know, there's no shortcuts. If you want quality, you really need to invest in good quality wood. Really, as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. No shortcuts to quality. A phrase I've heard many times from your father, and I think one that we've seen in both the whiskies that we're trying tonight. We're seeing that. Here's another one, similar kind of theme. This one's from Nigel, Alistair, out with Billy and David, who has been an inspiration to you in your whiskey career.
Oh, I honestly, I cannot really think of anybody, if I'm being honest. I've met a lot of really good people over the years that are kind of really quite legendary in the industry. People like Richard Patterson and Jim McEwen and Andrew Simonton, and there's loads of them. I don't want to offend anyone by not mentioning their name, but it's such a great industry, and people are so generous with their time. It's great to be a part of it, and there's loads of people that you can take things from or look up to certain aspects of the way they do things.
Listen, David, can I just add to that? I mean, Alistair just mentioned Andrew Simonton. You know, what a star he is. What a fantastic role he has, a role maker he has been in actually developing the independent bottler sector. It's fantastic. What Cygnus he did in the early days and continue to do is just stunning. And they were big players in making the whole category interesting and attractive. Yeah, good on you, Andrew. Top guy.
Certainly, Billy, I can agree with that. Going back to my very, very early days in the whiskey industry, Signatory, the packaging, the product, and Andrew, of course, is a great character. So he certainly set the bar high for independent bottlers. Alistair, you mentioned earlier on about your company's going from strength to strength. People are always keen to get into the whiskey industry. Are there any job opportunities? I'm available at short notice. That one's from Donald. I made that one up.
Bad boy.
But on a serious point, your company's growing. It's going from strength to strength. Can we see your team starting to expand?
I'd love to get to that point, David. I never started out this adventure because I wanted a life of solitude. That was not my plan. It'd be good to get to a point where I can bring in one or two other people, if only because it would give me somebody to talk to in the office. So let's see what happens over the next 12 to 18 months.
Difficult though, Alice. It's difficult because you're quite a difficult person to go on with.
I beg to differ, and I think if you ask David, who I was once David's probably the best boss that he ever worked for. Certainly the best boss he ever worked for on this particular screen.
I'm between a rock and a hard place, a former and a current boss, to an ex-colleague and a current colleague. So, oh dear. You're giving as good as you get, Alistair. An interesting question here, Alistair. Possibly you might not be able to answer it. One from Philip. Any finds in your inventory that are really unusual and something that we should look forward to?
You do get offered some casks that are atypical to the distillery make. You know, one of the casks that was bottled in batch 1 was a Croft and Gia, which is a heavily peated whisky from Loch Lomond. Now that's not necessarily a style of whisky that people would be familiar with from Loch Lomond. So when things like that come up, you jump at them. The problem is sometimes they're more interesting to me than they are commercially viable.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you go with them.
So by that, you mean the price that you're getting offered? It might be an outstanding, or an unusual cask, but the price you're getting offered just is.
No, it's not so much the price, just that I might find it to be interesting, but when you put it onto the market, people are so unfamiliar with it that it kind of passes them by a little bit.
Sure, I understand. Okay. Questions are firing in here, guys. Billy, I'm going to put this one to you. We've touched on age, but when you come across something that you had scheduled, you had planned to leave for longer, but you're trying it and it's outstanding, how do you make the call whether to stick to your schedule or just to bottle it?
I think my gut feeling would tell me to bottle it, David, because it kind of has reached its sweet point.
Sure.
In my mind. But we looked at something today, David, that 2004 cask that it's so difficult to try and benchmark it because it's just so wonderfully different from anything else that kind of is in the range at the moment. And but my kind of gut instinct is put it in bottle because you don't know where the journey is next going to go.
If it's good to go, it's good to go. Yeah. Okay. Alistair, how has marketing changed for you now that you are your own boss? Is it mostly online, or compared to the old days where it was specialised magazines for certain demographics?
Well, first of all, I'm laughing at the phrase "specialised magazines." I mean, I'm not sure what that's meant to mean.
We'll assume it means Whisky Advocate, Whisky Magazine, etc., and not any other kind of publications.
Online's a much bigger thing now. I mean, I remember when we started at Ben Riach, you had things like the Malt Advocate and Whisky Magazine and the Whisky Bible, and there was quite a few written publications. There wasn't a lot of blogging or forums, and that's. To be honest, I think that's completely taken over the kind of written, the printed medium. And the great thing online is, you can. It's very cost effective, but also you can do things like this where you can actually sit and talk to people, and people can ask you questions, and it's amazing how it's changed.
David,
I would agree with that.
He is seriously so tight.
I'm definitely not. I'm not going to make any comment about that. Maybe it's a family trait.
David, as the moderator, I think you have to get the other guest under control a little bit.
Alistair, we're actually going to we'll go to your next whiskey. We're running a little bit behind schedule. The last whiskey we're going to try tonight, one you've picked. I've got my little sample here. Billy, you've got your flag on there. Alistair, do you want to talk us through this one?
Yes. So I was very excited to bottle this. Now this is a pronunciation issue here because I call it Bowmore, but I know that Mr. McEwen calls it Bowmore, and I'm assuming he knows best. Nonetheless, what's your take on it?
Having dated an Isla girl back in the years, Bowmore is what I would reference it as.
Bowmore. Okay. Well, listen. The point that aside, getting access to a Bowmore cask is very exciting because it's such a highly regarded whiskey.
Fantastic on the nose.
Amazing in the nose. It's got all those kind of like tropical fruit notes, slightly medicinal, but. Here's my thing with Bowmore is I am not your biggest fan of Islay whiskies. I can appreciate them, but there's two in particular that I would kind of gravitate towards, and that's Bowmore and Kalila. And what I like about those two distillery makes is that as well as getting the phenols and the peat and those sort of slightly herbal, medicinal characteristics, there's always an underlying sweetness that comes through.
Sure.
So there's so many different things. I can tell Billy wants to interject here with something.
It's gentian violet.
It's what?
Gentian violet.
That's the notes that we're picking up underneath that. The sweet.
On the taste.
Well, on that, let's try it. What ABV did you say this was? Alistair? 48.3.
48.3, and it's a 1997 Bowmore, and most importantly, which I should mention, it's been finished in a PX sherry hogshead. So that's going to bring in a whole other layer of flavour and depth and those kind of big, chocolatey, fruity characteristics. And
I'll tell you something else. It also has reinvigorated the phenolic side. This is for this age of whiskey. The peated experience is amazingly strong. You know, it's not.
I was going to say that's one of the things with peated whiskey. You know, when it gets above a certain age, you do start to see that those big smoky characteristics start to sort of slowly diminish and fade a little bit into the background.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is alive.
This is fantastic whiskies. It's almost as good as a GlenAllachie. So 2 of this against 1 of ours, and we'll be smoking ours. Absolutely fantastic.
Is that the ratio?
It's not that good, David.
But it is that is fantastic whiskey, and as both of you have alluded, 22-year-old and lovely smoky phenolic notes still on the nose. Good balance. Yep, absolutely fantastic.
The thing is, David, with this one, sometimes you get a cask that you just know it's Bowmore, it's Islay, it's peated, it's PX sherry. What's not to like?
No, absolutely. And when it tastes as good as that, absolutely. Okay, just quickly flicking through some of these questions here. Alistair, would you like to own your own distillery one day?
Yes. Who wouldn't? Yeah, of course. But it's such a. I mean, obviously, there's a family connection with GlenAllachie anyway. Buying a distillery these days, the level of investment to just get across the threshold has gone up so much in the last sort of 5 to 10 years.
Sure,
it's a big challenge.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Yeah, it's a big challenge, a big price. This, of course, is a Father's Day special with family connection. Alistair, would you ever like to see Katie following in your footsteps and joining you in the world of whiskey? I know Katie is still at school, or should be at school if the schools are actually open. But for the years to come, would you like to see her joining your family business?
It's up to her, really. She does. She's already kind of developed quite a good nose. She's continually, if I'm having a whiskey or a wine or a beer, she'll come over and ask if she can nose it. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting with a 15-year-old Ben Ree at PX a couple of years ago. I said to her, so she was only 5 at the time, and I said, this whiskey is 15 years old. This is 10 years older than you. And she just said, yes, but I'm bigger than it. So.
A very good answer. A very good. No flies on Katie. There's a quick comment in there from Robin, enjoying the Bowmore 22-year-old, worth every penny. Beautifully balanced. Hello, Robin. What else do we have here coming in? Billy, every distillery, and not just in Scotland, every distillery around the world is trying to get good quality casks. What challenges is that going to present for the industry as a whole, and what is your secret to sourcing them?
I mean, that is a fantastic question, because the challenges are from everywhere. Let me give you 2 things that are important, David. First of all, safe hands. Secondly, you pay in time. And then everything else falls into place. We have good sources, we have good relationships, kind of know what we're looking for. We know when we buy a cask, it's not that maybe this will work. We kind of know exactly how it's to deliver for us, and so we're happy. Even if the price is high, we're happy to invest the money in the wood, because I know that many people will disagree with me. I don't think Richard Patterson would mind you. I think the wood, everything else being equal, you make the spirit the way you want to, long fermentation, well distilled, well husbanded, put it into good wood. What a good opportunity you have. So the wood is so important. Let's say 85%.
Absolutely. So sourcing good wood, long-term relationships, knowing what you're looking for to start with, and where to get it.
David, safe hands.
Safe hands. Okay. A comment from one of our colleagues. Happy Father's Day to all the dads. I hope you all get some fantastic whiskey for your present. Karen, I think that's a sentiment we can all agree with. Billy, our evening is coming to a close. We're at 8:05. We have, on that note of the Father's Day, we have a competition winner to announce. One lucky winner, one lucky father, is going to win a bottle of our multi-award-winning McNair's 21-year-old, which is, of course, the world's best blended malt, as selected by Whisky Magazine judges in a blind tasting. Billy, if our colleagues, Colette and Fiona, have pulled together all the names of everybody that entered the competition on our Facebook pages and Instagram and other social media things that I'm not familiar with. Billy, I believe there is a hat with names.
Here's a hat.
Billy, if you want to pull a name, please pull a tag from there.
I'm not looking. You can see it's above my eye level.
It's above your eye level. If you've got your glasses on, if you can maybe read the name out for us.
The name is Craig Bonham.
Craig Bonham, congratulations. You are the winner of the best blended malt in the world. Our colleagues, Colette, Fiona, will be in touch to confirm the details. We'll get the bottle posted out for your father. So excellent. Someone is going to have a very good Father's Day. Okay, guys, thanks again, everyone, for joining us for the Father's Day special. Billy, thanks as always for your time. It's great chatting whiskey with you. Alistair, been a pleasure as well, and it's not often I say that. No, thank you very much for joining us, both of you. And of course, everyone else who's joined us from all around the world. And I've seen a comment just coming in as I'm talking there from Impex, our new partners in the US. We're looking very much forward to working with those gentlemen. Guys, ladies and gents, thank you everybody for joining us. Please join us, I think it's a fortnight's time, Thursday, the 2nd of July, same time, 7 p.m. Something different again. This time our sales manager, the GlenAllachie European sales manager, Juliet, ventures into the world of beer. Juliet is joined by Stuart Andrew Evans of a local distillery, a local brewery, Windswept Brewing Company. So Juliet will be talking beer with Stuart Andrew Evans in a fortnight's time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Billy and Alistair, thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.